Leave your ego at the door and get ready to be raw. This is Strength to Overcome, where real men find their strength in weakness. All right, guys, welcome back to the Strength to Overcome podcast. I'm Ryan here with my co-host Matt, and we're here for episode 11 this week. Matt, what's going on in your world, brother?
I'm just shocked that it's episode 11, not because we didn't think we'd make it this far, but because it's gone that quick, even though it feels like an eternity since the surgery that kind of triggered this whole thing. So I'm really kind of caught. It's like Back to the Future, right? I'm sort of stuck between two worlds. Has it gone quick or has it been a real slow process? I'm not sure. What about your end?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of gone quick. 11 episodes in, that means 11 weeks, right? So we're coming up on that 3-month mark, really, of our first release, and covered a lot of ground, and a lot of things have happened in that 3-month period or that 2.5-month period. So I'd say it's gone quick for me too, but kind of give me an update of what's going on in your world right now.
Well, I think I alluded to it last episode or even the last couple of episodes, this process of trying to reinvent myself, not because I didn't like the old self, but I've got some things that I wanted to clean up. And of course, long story short there, for those that haven't been checking in on those other episodes, I recommend you do. But, I feel led to get back into the space of health and fitness and mentoring and, working with people in that area. So I'm feeling more and more drawn to it. And I think initially, about a year ago when I had this opportunity to kind of go back into it, I went down the carpentry route, and then, here I am again. And this time I feel more led, more prepared, more inspired to get into that space. And part of what we've done here together has kind of fueled that, right? Getting back together with, some old mates and content with you and just reconnecting on a lot of stuff. And a lot of it seems to have come from that fitness, period of my life, that, 20 plus years in the fitness industry. So, I think I'm getting close now, and a lot's happened in the last week for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned a couple things off camera and looking at some different opportunities and things like that. We've talked a little bit about which direction you should go and that sort of thing. Are you thinking about getting back into training people one-on-one, being a fitness trainer again? Is that kind of your direction?
Well, it's funny, you and I behind the scenes have talked a lot about getting back into the space and having our own places in the past. You're drawn to wanting to do it again and make it better and learn from those, years that you put in. And I reached out to a couple of other people as well. And one was Steven Adams out in California, the guy that actually hired me in the Crunch Fitness franchise out there. And I was chatting with him a little bit about it, and of course, he said, well, hey, if you're getting back into the space, would you entertain coming back out here to California? And of course, I had such great memories. I've made so many great friends out there, and so, the draw to do that and be back part of that community, and the way they're growing and what they're about to pull off is quite spectacular and very exciting. And so I've spent the last week or so contemplating that opportunity that's been presented to me. And obviously it's not just my decision, right? It's a household, it's a family unit. And so it's been a really challenging time because I'm drawn to working with people that I've come to love and respect and had a great run with. And so to have to potentially turn that down has been heartbreaking. It's been something that's kind of knocked the wind out of my sails a little bit, because it doesn't look like that's going to come together, at least right now, given our circumstances and some of, those more difficult challenges, right, of relocating and family and things like that. So that's been tough, to be wanted and sought after and needed again in a big capacity. It's not just an ego boost, it's actually a real shot in the arm of I'm valuable. I think there's a difference. I don't know if it's come across like that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that. It's got to be tough to have to turn it down when it's a fairly good opportunity, and it just happens to be across the country, right? And back where you came from, and you might not have that same support that you once had to go back that direction. What are you doing in the meantime, what are you doing in your current location to kind of figure out what's next?
Yeah, I've kicked over a lot of rocks. I've got a lot of conversations that I've had, and I've got a couple coming up just to try and help me figure out. Listen, I'm trying to figure out where I'm needed, right? I believe that there's an almighty force. I say that the almighty creator is putting together a real story here, and I'm feeling more and more led to be in a space where I can help people. And if that's through training, if it's through management, if it's through starting my own place, if it's through something else, then I've got to entertain everything. And it's not a matter of, waiting. I don't sit around and wait. I have a lot of conversations, and you're part of that story, right? I'm going out of my way. I'm spending a lot of time in prayer and meditation and research and spreadsheets and trying to figure it out, because I know, and you do too, having met me when I had my own gym, I know that if I'm going to put a lot of time and effort into the next step, that I want it to be something that's meaningful and purposeful, and that I'm really going to enjoy. I don't want to just do something to have a job, right? And of course I'm limited because this shoulder is still frozen, so I'm kind of feeling a little bit of a pinch there, and trying to figure it out is what I'm working on 24/7.
What's the timeline look like? Do you have to make a decision by a certain amount of time? When's the clock up in your case?
Well, to be as honest as I can, the clock was up a while ago. We're really running on borrowed time here with options we've got. You can't be out of work for that long, and you burn through what you've put aside, right? I had told myself by the end of June I wanted to have a concrete direction, and I feel like I've got that direction, and now I'm just vehemently praying and searching and asking, and without hesitation talking to people, and kicking over every rock, like I said, to try and see where does the Almighty want to put me, because I really do feel called to do it, and I'm trying to figure that out now. So imminently would be a good word to use.
Yeah, yeah. There's something to be said for taking action, right? Like you said, it's hard to wait around and that sort of thing, but you've been putting in the work and making the connections needed to kind of get the ball rolling in the right direction. And that's what we were going to talk a little bit about today, right? With kind of this whole idea around intention and a topic you and I have dived into a little bit on our own with the quantum field, and this power of intention that has energy with it, right? And so that's kind of what we're going to dive into a little bit today, and roll around with and see what we come up with. So what's kind of on your mind about that?
Well, it's funny. I have shared so many little anecdotes and stories of things that have happened around here on my walks, and just little, moments that I feel I've walked into a little divine appointment with. And it was a funny one where I was thinking about my oldest, Callie. It was a couple of years ago. We were walking across the back of the golf course that I live on. And by the way, I'll never live on a golf course again. Don't be offended. I know you're a golfer and so am I, but never again, right? We've had 3 broken windows and there's golfers in our garden every day. But we went out walking one day, and she was looking for golf balls, as we do. And she said, Daddy, I want to find a red one. And for those of you that don't golf, that's a damn impossibility, because nobody plays with a red golf ball, right? So we're out there walking around, and I kind of tried to brush it off, and we found a bunch of white ones, and she brought it up again. I want to find a red golf ball. And you don't want to dismiss their request and, diminish their excitement, but we're out there and she's playing in some mud, and I decided to get the camera out, and I'm filming her playing in the mud with the stick, and we're finding golf balls and having a blast. And then all of a sudden I remember looking at her and I said, "Hey, Callie, turn around." And so she turns around, and I said, "Look way behind you up on the bank there." I said, "There's a bunch of leaves. It looked like there's this really cool looking red leaf back there." I said, "Do you think that could be a golf ball?" No, right? Is the back of my mind is like, that's not a golf ball. So I've got it on film, and I walk around, and I, keep it on her, but I'm walking around, and as I get to the other side of this bank, I have to climb over some trees and some brush, and there's crocs probably close by, and I, walk around there, I step over a few things, step under a few things, I film the whole thing, and I reach in for this leaf, and she's watching me the whole time, and I reach in for this leaf, and this is what I pulled out. So for those of you that are listening, not watching, it's a red golf ball. Now, I've played a lot of golf back in the day. I used to play 3 days a week and hit balls the other days, right? I was playing a lot back in the time, and I have never in my life played with a red golf ball. Ryan, can you lean in here a little bit? Tell me how rare that is?
Yeah, you don't see that very often, right? With a red golf ball. So, pretty much 98% of golf balls are white. There's been a trend recently of the yellow golf ball coming up more often, but don't see a red one too often, so that's pretty wild.
So I've got this red golf ball and I've kept it ever since, and the photo of her holding it up is my screensaver on my phone, because it was at that moment, this is a couple of years ago, it was at that moment I realized that the power of intention. Right, it had come from this, I think she was probably 3 at the time, this 3-year-old that didn't know any better, right? Didn't realize that a red golf ball is, first of all, it's unheard of. I've never even played with anybody that's even used one. But to ask for one, and then I'm filming and in the background see one and go get it, the odds of that, I don't even know if there are odds, right? There can't be odds for something like that. It's basically impossible. Was the intention of her, in her mind, enough to generate this red golf ball, or at least put me in a position where I saw it and then had the faith to think, well, maybe it's not a leaf, maybe it's a golf ball? I mean, I don't know. Lean in on that for me.
Yeah, it's wild. It's almost like the power of intention and the energy created from that almost, normally people would call that a coincidence, right? And it's just a coincidence that it happened. But it's kind of interesting that she asked for it and was looking for it. You both were looking for it, and it came into fruition. I've had similar things like that happen to me before as well. When we had our first gym that I talked about in episode, what was that, episode 2 or 3? We were, my business partner and I were going back and forth, kind of dreaming back and forth with each other at one point, and we had said to each other, how cool would it be to own Brick House one day? And referring to Brick House, the gym downtown, down the street, that was like the mecca of CrossFit gyms. And we said to each other, how cool would that be to own that one day? And sure enough, less than a month later, the owners of that gym set up a meeting with us, reached out to me, set up a meeting with us, and basically offered Brick House to us because they were ready to move on. And
That's crazy.
it's that sort of thing. Like I said, that power of intention, and it goes back to what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about in his books with the quantum field and the energy levels and the vibrations that you're putting out there into the world. It's a pretty wild idea, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but it's those sort of things that you would normally just call coincidence maybe aren't so coincidental.
Yeah, and I just can't believe that there's, those level of coincidences out there. And for those that want to dispel, did we just find the golf ball, or did it spontaneously appear, or when you and your buddy were going back and forth on Brick House, did they get a whisper? Did somebody say, you know what, you guys should sell it? Like, what happened in those moments that created those events to make you go, okay, whoa, that's weird. Like, there's no way, kind of thing, right? And so then you start to think, well, hang on a minute. Does that mean that I could have the opposite effect, right? If you are intentionally looking for something or putting out a vibrational energy that is trying to draw you a future or an opportunity or a new life partner, or, getting pregnant when you can't, or, whatever it might be, right? Could the opposite be true? Could you draw negativity? Could you create, the opposite? And so this morning, I'll let you answer that before I go on.
Yeah, I think definitely I'm guilty of it in the past, as well as I think many people in their lives are constantly surrounded by negativity and chaos, and their own thoughts and emotions perpetuate those feelings, and it ends up becoming a loop that can dominate and control someone's life from a young age to an old age. It's pretty wild to look at it and watch it happen from the outside. It's hard to see it when you're in it, doing it. But if you step back, take a couple steps back and look at it from an outside perspective, you see someone who can essentially ruin their lives through thought and emotion and a negative loop. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and it's funny because you've just said a word that's going to kind of bring this together. Even in the episode, it has literally fulfilled its own point, because you just said the very word that I'm going to share a little story about, and then you'll see why. This morning I was on my walk and I've been caught in a negative loop. I'm doing my absolute best, but it just seems like I'm taking one punch after the other, and I'm on the canvas, I'm getting beat to hell. Everything I try and do seems to just fall apart, and I've constantly thought, man, am I just stuck in that negative loop, right? What am I doing wrong? I'm praying, I'm meditating, I'm doing everything I can to get myself out of this, sticky situation with a busted shoulder and finances, and a marriage that's struggling and, trying to raise two little kids, and I'm just stuck in this place where one thing after the other, right? And, I was walking along this morning, and I walk along part of the golf course, and so I look as I'm walking and I see this little white spot. No big deal. I see, golf balls all the time, but something made me stop, turn around. I walked about 10 paces back, and I remember as I was walking back thinking, I need to pick up this golf ball because it's going to have a word on it for me. And once again, for those that are listening, Ryan can tell you what it says on the golf ball that I picked up. Chaos.
It says chaos.
Chaos. I pick up a golf ball that says chaos. And you just said it a second ago. You said you can get yourself stuck in this state of chaos. And I picked that ball up. I was a little like, really? Like looking into the heavens as I do. I'm like, okay, so you like the red golf ball moment, right? You make me pick up this random golf ball. And I don't pick them up because there's a million of them at my house. And so I don't pick them up when I'm on my walks. I don't have to carry it, put it in my pocket or any of that nonsense. But I go back for this particular one and it says chaos. And then I get up around the corner and I keep on walking, and then I see another ball, and it is this crushed like practice golf ball that's sitting on the ground. And the first word that popped into my head when I saw this ball that looks like it's been stepped on, the first word that popped into my head was depressed, right? It's been depressed. And I'm sitting there as I continue on this walk, and I obviously brought them home with me, right? But I've got this mindset where I'm stuck in this chaos loop in a depressed state, just barely functioning. And I had to spend the rest of my walk realizing that I'm creating a negative loop of my own, which I know you had just mentioned, and I realize I'm in it. I might be on the outside doing things, but I'm sending out a frequency of negativity. I might be praying, I might be asking, meditating, I might be thinking, but I'm not believing, I'm not feeling that those things are going to come to fruition, and I'm stuck in this negative, chaotic loop.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, right? It's and unbeknownst to themselves, they don't understand, they don't feel it. It's just a constant loop of negative emotion after negative emotion, or feeling or thought that doesn't serve them, and it just perpetuates.
Yeah, and I mean, I spent the rest of that walk actually having to reset myself. I'm stuck thinking, right, I've got to make a certain amount of money, or I've got to, come up with the perfect position. And it's like, no, you really don't, right? Just lean into what do you feel called to do? What does it look like? How could you picture that? And I spent the next, hour or whatever it was walking, picturing something grand, something spectacular, something that will fund my family and hopefully many people around me, where we literally get to work with people that are struggling, and we can do it through the arena of health and fitness. It could be done through bringing in specialists. It could be done in many, many ways. But, I see a vision of this podcast, going much, much longer than what we, sometimes have probably felt it would. I see a headquarters, I see a gym, I see a retreat where people could literally come and spend, 2-3 days or 5 days, like a camp, a type of venue where people are able to meet others or come with a group of their own, whatever it might look like, and come away rejuvenated, inspired, and ready to take on the world, when without something like that, they may feel like they're stuck in a loop or not even realize they're in a loop, right? So I started to picture this vision, which I've had for a long time, and I'm sharing it publicly now, but there's more to the vision. But I'll stop with those three things there because they all tie together, right now. But I see even somehow, you and I are back in this space together. We're working on this. I've got other people that want to help and draw from their experiences of losing loved ones or overcoming something, and just this group of men that are hell-bent on making sure that there's no one out there that doesn't at least have the opportunity to get help somehow. And if it's through health and fitness or through my podcast or through the retreat, doesn't matter. Right? And I got back and I was pumped. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to change the world, right? That is the energy that Dispenza talks about in a lot of his books, right? You've got a thought in your mind, but do you have the belief in you so that the vibrational frequency, there's harmony between the thought and the emotion, and then that signal can go out. And I fully expect things to start to come together. I'm not joking. I mean, I'm live here, so go ahead and, start the timer on this, but I see this happening. I don't know the timeline. I don't know how. I don't know when. I don't know who, but I see it happening. That got me excited.
And then the challenge is to break the habit of having a negative thought or emotion, start the negative loop all over again, right? And keep that vibrational energy going, keep the vibe, if you will, going when your body wants to pull you back into that mode of chaos.
Well, there's no doubt, and I talked about it last week, right? Reaching out to people, and it's funny, I have thought of my own words so many times this week where I have literally felt rock bottom. I have been very down on myself and just not sure on which way to even step. And each time I've allowed those negative thoughts to sort of overwhelm me, I've shot you a text or a buddy, or I've reached out. I've done what I had said, reach out to someone, and it's kind of helped me, because I think this week's been one of the very toughest weeks of my life, where I've definitely felt overwhelmed, emotionally just drained, exhausted. There's other things going on that just suck the living life out of you. Reaching out and being able to grab someone via text or a call has been life-saving in a way.
You mentioned that idea of rock bottom, and it's something you had also been at before, right? Back in 2016. How do you think it compares back then, 2016, 9 years ago, to what you're feeling this week and today?
Well, it's funny you'd ask that exact question, and that's not something that we pre-planned for the audience listening or watching. That has absolutely come out of thin air. So it's funny you'd ask it. But back then, I remember being in Northern California. I'd completed the fast. My divorce was imminent. Paperwork had been filed. So I was expecting paperwork. I was still recovering from scabies. I'd burnt myself to a crisp. I had no one, nothing. I felt like I had absolutely no purpose whatsoever. And so there's just an easy step to, well, what's the point, right? And then you start getting some really dark negative thoughts that we've talked about. And this week has felt as dark for me, because this time I do have a wife and I've got little kids, and I have felt, see, there I go again, right? I have felt hopeless, useless, unneeded, unwanted, broken physically. I'm doing everything I can. I'm seeing a specialist that's working, as hard as he can to get me back up and running. But, I feel like I'm in this holding pattern when I know better. I know I can create things, not that the Almighty's not doing it for me, but I know I can at least create good thoughts. But I feel like I'm failing as a husband. Let me go again, right? For the audience, I felt that I was failing my marriage. I felt that I was failing as a father and as a provider. I mean, my kids want to wrestle with me and jump on me in the pool and do that stuff, and I just haven't been 3 months in now. And financially, I've been the breadwinner, or the predominant breadwinner, and now I'm in that position where I'm waiting for this vision to come to fruition. However it's going to now, I believe it will. But I feel as dark as I did back then, because I want to have a good marriage. I want to be a great father. I want to be a great provider. I want to financially be able to produce and provide a good lifestyle. And I feel trapped. I feel like I can't. And I think probably some of that darkness came from having to really work through the opportunity to be back in California. I've got a lot of good friends there, a good support network, and a good fellowship, family and the faith side of things, and obviously good opportunity in the business side. So, I really felt like I had manifested something that checked a lot of boxes. And I think when that realization came that wasn't going to pan out, it really pulled the rug from under me, and I had to sit and realize, was it a selfish decision to even entertain it? Was I just looking at it out for myself, right? And definitely there are parts in there that I was. And so, I'm just wrestling with all of it. I think as a guy, I think even you, right? You've wrestled with that, and even you said, behind the scenes, you said you've taken the month of July off, right? And you're not sure if you'll go back. So we've talked a little bit about you not having an identity, and I think I've just lost my identity while I'm waiting for this vision to come to fruition. So, I'll flip it back to you now. You've got this month off, and you're not sure if you'll go back, but you might want to have an identity. So are you thinking that you want to do something different, or you just don't want to do that?
I think what I'm really looking at forward to leaning into is just being the father, and having that be the identity moving forward, of being the stay-at-home dad, and leaning into that new challenge, new vision, new direction, new chapter of life, versus trying to create some hobby or old passion out of nothing and dive into that to distract myself all over again. So in a way, it's a little bit refreshing in that this is something new and exciting to dive into and to challenge me in a new way versus trying to find something old or find something that I've done before and distract myself away with it again. Because, yeah, I don't really know what the career is going to look like or if there is even a career for me out there again. It could be that I've reached the end of my working career and now the new chapter is the support system of the family.
Did you, at any point in your past, whether you can remember this specifically or not, create that vision? Because I mean, you're in a very enviable position, at least for me, right? I'd love to be in that position where I could be that stay-at-home dad, and we're going to homeschool, right? So, your opportunities to do everything that I'd like is unfolding before my eyes. Maybe not everyone's, but did you, at some point in the past, put together this vision of what's about to unfold for you?
I mean, a little bit. When Eric and I first started dating, I joked about being on the stay-at-home dad track, with her career choice and her being a physician or on the track, 4 years out from being a physician when we first met. And I would joke, hey, I'm on the stay-at-home dad track now. And with all the stress that comes along with being a business owner, and you can relate to that kind of stress that people who own small businesses have, it was almost a welcome thought or a vision of being free of this, call it a burden on you every day of owning a small business and being responsible for people's livelihoods and your own livelihood and, just treading water, trying to stay above water every day to a whole nother vision of now that's a thing of the past and I'm now a stay-at-home dad or I'm now not the breadwinner of the family, but I'm a key support piece of the family where I'm, staying home with the kid and taking care of the household and that sort of thing without the stress, the financial stress at least of trying to make a dollar every day.
Yeah, and it's funny because the thought just crossed my mind, and I, know your missus is going to want to reach through the video here and maybe wring my neck. But there's a good argument to say that you've actually got the tougher job.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and for those of us that have had to stay at home for many, many days, weeks, months, and into years being that person, those people might be like, yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, she's a physician and she's, spent a lot of her life in school and she's worked her ass off to get to that position. And it's going to be tough when she's doing it. So there'll be a real good argument there. But I say it in jest because you do have a life in your hands and she will too, right? So you're both going to have, a lot on your plate that at the end of the day could be a challenge. So what would you say looking forward would be the vision now? If you could sit here and say, right, I want to create that red golf ball moment for something that's in the distant future or the short-term future. Give me some insight because I've kind of shared mine a little bit. I've got more to it, but we'll stop there on mine. So what's yours look like?
Yeah, for me, I mean, we're both kind of putting it together as we go here. And, Erica and I have already talked about, the idea of the lifestyle we want to live and where we want to live. And, I'd love to be on a golf course somewhere, ironically, because that's kind of where you want to get away from. But, living on a golf course, golf community, being a member of a club, being able to participate as a country club member and enjoy that lifestyle a little bit is something that is kind of on my radar moving forward. Balancing that with being the stay-at-home dad and being the primary caretaker of our new baby when he comes. And so we're kind of building our vision around that. And she's already starting to get offers from different locations, different places. And so we're looking around of where that might be and how that might fit into the puzzle and see what we want to do with all that. So it's kind of starting to come together, really.
Can you put in a request for Bradenton, Florida?
Yeah, that'd probably be a pretty good spot, right? With the golf community there.
Yeah, a lot of golf in the whole state of Florida. I think it's probably the golfing and retirement capital of the world. But I think that, what you're about to embark on is going to be challenging. So how are you emotionally dealing with that? Because as I just shared, I've got a vision and I've had a vision. I've written it down. I've got all the goals. I go through it. For those that do that type of stuff, they get it, right? But there's got to be an emotional charge that's attached to it. So do you guys sit around and kind of talk about it and get excited? Like, wow, this is going to happen. This is where we'd like to be. This is what it looks like. Have you attached that emotional excitement to what you just described?
A little bit. Yeah, I think right now it's a little bit more of relief that we've gotten through like the most difficult parts of her med school and her, first year residency, just ended. So she's officially a second year resident as of today. And, a lot of it's just looking back with some gratitude, first off, and thinking about where we've come from and what we've overcome to be able to get to where we are today. And, keeping that gratitude at the front of the mind as we move into this new chapter. And then we can start to get excited about what's to come and what's on our plates ahead of us. But yeah, it's been pretty wild so far.
For anyone that has not listened to episode 3, go back and listen to Ryan's testimony, because I got chills as he was just describing the future and what's about to unfold for them. And if you haven't already heard the backstory, you'll need to go back and listen to that, because you'll understand full throttle what it is that's just happened here in his last 5, 6, 7 years to get him to this place. And it kind of inspires me, because you got to look forward sometimes, right? I know people say live in the moment and stay present, and that's fine. But, Dispenza talks about this, and you've just used the buzzword. The key word is gratitude. You've got to have a sense of gratitude, because listen, we're not saying you can think hard enough and be excited enough and you just get what you want, like some sort of genie in a bottle type, environment. You've got to believe wholeheartedly that these things are falling into place, because there's a power that wants to help those things happen. And when you believe and you give the credit and gratitude to where it's deserved, whatever your belief system, to me, that seems to be one of the key components of his material, is having gratitude and thanks, right? Never forgetting that. So it's really cool that you just share that, and it's a great reminder for me to continuously share that gratitude into my children and make sure that they understand what they've got. Whether it changes or not is irrelevant. You should always have gratitude for the breath that you have in your body, because any day now it can change, right? So thanks for bringing that word up. We've had a couple of moments where that's happened today. One was the chaos and one was the gratitude. So, I'm pretty pumped for that. I'd love to dig in a little bit more on this. Maybe it can be a future episode or next week part 2 kind of thing. But for those that haven't read those type of books or listened to that material, you really do want to have something that keeps you grounded in positivity, whether it's podcasts. I know you shared a terrific podcast with me last week, Ed Milet, right?
Yeah.
And his stuff is fantastic, and that just was what I needed at that moment, and it grounded me when I was really struggling. And that was a fantastic podcast and great series, and it sounds like a great guy to be following. But share with me a little bit about what you've done with those types of things, because I think a lot of times people get caught in their own loop, and we're not there yet, but we're going to be there one day in this podcast. But for those out there looking for, more content or deeper, what do you got?
Well, I was just thinking about that as we were talking, kind of the next steps for what Strength to Overcome has got to be. And, you talked a little bit about your vision and our vision for what we want it to ultimately be. But I was thinking the next steps for what we really need to accomplish here is we've got to bring this community together, right? And it's, we've got people listening, we've got people talking, but not to each other yet. And I think that's going to be really our next step of building this community, is putting together a select group of people, whether it be on Facebook, the private Facebook group type atmosphere with Strength to Overcome, and, really letting people connect with other people and us connect with them as well is something I just kind of hit me as we were talking today, that we really need to make happen sooner rather than later. Because like I said, we've laid out the groundwork. We've talked about things. We've got people listening. There's other people out there that are struggling in similar ways as us. And I think it's time that we connect each other. What do you think?
Absolutely. I've been thinking about that this week, and I know that, sometimes you get caught in your mind, don't reach out to them and share that you're struggling, or, hey, my marriage is struggling, or financially or physically, right? Don't do that. You look weak, you look soft, people don't know what to say. And it's like, bugger that. Like, when did we become this society where if someone reaches out to you and says, hey man, I'm struggling, and you're in a position to help them, not, just hand money out or whatnot, but you might say, hey, I've got a guy that I have worked with that had a frozen shoulder and he saw this guy, right? It can be a connection that you make. It could be a prayer they might, pray over you. It might be, hey, this is a great book that I've read, which you've done for me, right? It could be any of the millions of things that could come up from reaching out to someone. And I think we get caught in this mindset that we're going to look like we don't have it all together. Well, as I've already shared many, many times, I don't have it all together. And I used to think I did. I used to think I had it all figured out. And I think a few people have reached out to me that didn't know the story from back when I had 180, my gym, and go, holy crap, I had no idea that happened. Or, wow, holy crap, there's no way you fasted for 40 days. Like, yeah, water only, baby. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not even real. Like, yeah, I mean, people don't know, and so you don't share. So I think it's time, right? I'm ready to listen. There's not a lot left out there for me to keep, and this week particularly, I've seen the power of reaching out, and that whole California thing was disappointing because I got my hopes up that was going to come together, and maybe it still could. Maybe there's still more to that story that's going to unfold. But what it did do is it made me realize I am valuable, because up until that point I felt like I had no value to give anymore. I'd failed and I was not worth anything. So that alone gave me that shot in the arm. And those guys out there, they did that. Steve Kleinfelter, Jared Barnes, and Steven Adams, incredible men, and whether I get to work with them again or not, or what it looks like, those guys need to know just how much they lifted my spirits, trying to, support me, not just because I was, needing something, but they saw value in me, which was just, amazing. Right. And so, yeah, let's do it. I'm going to make it this week's mission. Listen, if your baby doesn't come in the next 11 days that it's due, I want to make the next, week and a half a commitment to putting something together, or at least figuring it out. So you're the brains. I know a lot of people out there, hear me a lot, but you're the brains behind this. You put the stuff together. You do the editing. You put the graphics together. I could probably do it, and it would take me about 17 hours to do what you probably do in an hour. It just doesn't come as natural to me. So it's going to, be something that you're going to have to dig in on a little bit. But, I'm passionate to reach out and find someone that, is in need, and say, right, there's the first, right? There's that first person. Yeah. Or have them find us, right? Whatever it looks like. I don't care. But let's do that, right? Because I need that to take place, and I think that might be the next step for us.
So let's do this. That'll be our homework for this week. We're going to create that community, get that out there. I'm going to go ahead and link it in the show notes. So if you guys are listening, look down in the show notes. There's going to be a link to that Facebook group, that Facebook community, and request to join and jump in there, and let's start to have real conversations and connect with each other, and get this community truly connected, so we can build it up together. Sound good?
I'm pumped, man. I'm absolutely pumped to do that. I've got chills, all over me just hearing you say that. And for those again out there that don't understand, I look back on this union, Ryan and I coming back together after all these years, and I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, my bandwidth is so short right now on stuff that I'm not good at, like the technical side that he's putting together in the background to get this stuff out there and put it up there is just divinely appointed, because if it was up to me to do and I had another one of me that I was doing this with, nothing would be uploaded. It'd be a mess. I post to the wrong chats, and he's always like, Matt, you've shared it to the wrong spot. You've got the wrong link. It's like, oh my goodness. And I've just got so much going on, and he's been an absolute blessing, or I should say you, right? I'm talking to you, but you've been an absolute blessing, not just in your friendship and supporting me behind the scenes, but being the guy that's putting this together. So, thank you for that. Thank you for your patience with me. I know I've been a challenge at times, but thank you for that. And, maybe there's a side hustle for you out there. Maybe someone will hear this and be like, wait a minute, you can be a stay-at-home dad, but I need you to do something on the side for me too, right? We don't know. That's what this community is going to be about, right? So thank you, Ryan, for being that person in my life to help me get this message and share your messages out.
Yeah, man, absolutely. My pleasure. And we're excited for what's to come. So, Guys, make sure you like, subscribe, share the podcast, send it to a friend, click on the link below, try to join the community, the private Facebook community, and let's keep growing this thing as we go.
Yeah, email address, I always forget it. Fire that off for us, would you?
Yep. info.strengthtoovercome@gmail.com. Remember, that's a 2, the number 2, info.strengthtoovercome@gmail.com. Shoot us a message. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely, guys. The 2 is because do not try to do it alone. Reach out, connect with someone, and hopefully we can get this community up and running. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ryan. I look forward to more of this. I'm pumped. I'm always pumped after these, man. So that's why I know this is what I'm meant to be doing. Not just this, but other things too. That's why I know this is the direction for me. So thanks for being a part of it, man.
You got it. All right, guys.
Cheers.